All right. Welcome back to the Mentality Podcast. It's your boy Shortstack. And I know I've been away from you guys for a little while. I've kind of been working on some personal things, trying to finish my master's degree and preparing myself to retire from the military after 22 years. I'm looking forward to starting off a new chapter in my life and moving on to bigger and better things after serving my country for 22 years. I am still trying to hammer some things out, so I will not be posting as frequently as I was. But as soon as I get everything tied down, I will be back full time. But in the meantime, I have with me one of my friends and coworkers, Nick Swartz. Nick, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hey, everyone out there. My name is Nick Swartz. I am 38 years old and I was born in Arizona. I'm a military brat, so I kind of lived over Europe and the United States. So I don't really have a home, but I kind of move around and make my home where I go. I've been in the military for 16 years now. I'm not quite to retirement yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So I'm jealous of you. Um, but I am also working on my master's as well, so that's pretty cool. We have some things going on that are pretty similar. But
What's your master's degree in?
it's an MBA, so just a generic MBA, Master of Business Administration.
Okay. Yeah, mine's sports management. Um, and I don't really know what I'm planning on doing once I get out of the military, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, sir.
Thank you, thank you. So Nick, you have been following my podcast since it started. I know I don't have that many episodes out there. I hope to um, rectify that in the near future. But you've we've talked about some of the discussions that I've had with some of the other guys, and this is a podcast about that men can get on and discuss things that affect them. And you and I have had some discussions about some of the things that have affected you. What would you say is one of the top things that has affected you in your time?
So one thing that really touches with me is mental health. Um, I have been in the service for 16 years, and I have been a patient in mental health for more than 15 of it. It was about a little around my 1 year mark that I started seeking mental health help. And it has not hindered my assignments, my promotion. If anything, makes me a better person, father, husband, and a worker, and person that contributes in society because I seek that help when I need it.
Okay, so you said that you've been dealing with mental health issues for roughly about 15 years, and you said you've been in the military for 16 years.
Yes, sir.
So it's safe to say that you've kind of been dealing with these issues from the earliest points of your career. What were some of the issues that led you to seek help?
So I noticed that my job performance was starting to go down. I was in England for my very first assignment, so lots of darkness. The weather was absolutely horrendous for me. It was, I swear, it rained from November to March every single day,
I know
and
that had to be difficult being from Arizona because it's dry and hot out there, right?
absolutely. So moving from Arizona to places like Spain and Italy and Florida, where there's lots of sunshine and the weather's nice and people go there for the weather, to go to somewhere that is dark and wet and cold. It was a lot, and then with my work and my marriage and having kids, and it was a lot for me to deal with. And I noticed that things weren't always bouncing back. I was getting knocked down longer, and it took me longer to get back up, and I went further down with each blow. So I noticed that I needed help. I was not able to get back to my level of performance that I held myself to, and it was really bothering me. So instead of turning to alcohol, or trying to do something to give me that extra boost, or just bury it and not address it, I went and I asked help for it. My supervision was supportive of it. My wife was supportive of it. And I'm still here because I sought that help.
So let me ask you a question. So, what age did you join the military?
I joined late. I was 22 when I joined.
Okay, so you're 22, 23 years old. Your first duty station is England. What is this your first time being away from your family?
Yes, sir, it was.
All right, so it's your first time being away from your family, and you're in a foreign country where you don't know anybody. It's dark, gloomy, rainy, um, and you're probably in an environment where you're not only unfamiliar with the location and the people, but this is your first duty station, so you're unfamiliar with the job that you have to do. But you know that there are certain levels of expectations that people have for you, right? So I would say that it's safe to say that that's a lot of pressure to be under for someone that is still relatively young and inexperienced in life. So you know how you say that you started to notice that that you weren't bouncing back. What exactly did that look like for you?
For me, that was I would started to sleep in more. I would started neglecting chores around the house. I didn't work out as much as I needed to stay in shape for my physical training tests. Um, my job performance was going down. I never failed an inspection, but I noticed that I was turning out equipment slower and slower. I was more lethargic. I was less helpful around the house. My my care that I put into my relationship with my wife, and when my children are born there, they didn't receive 100% of what I needed to give them. And I know that I was better than that, but there was something wrong, and I couldn't figure it out on my own. So I went seeking professional help for that.
So about so how long were you in England?
I was in England over 4.5 years.
Okay, so at what point during your tour there did you start to realize these things were happening?
I noticed it pretty early on with the weather. My wife, when we got there, she didn't have a job, so I had to support us on a fairly low budget in a foreign country. Plane tickets at the time were like $1,500, and that was more than half my paycheck. So when my wife wanted to visit, or if we wanted to go sightseeing, everything was just super expensive because the pound at the time was like 2.5 or $2.2 for 1 pound. And so it was expensive. It was
And
my
you weren't making a whole lot either.
no, no, not at all. It was very stressful in a lot of different ways. Granted, it was England; they spoke English, but the you drove on the opposite side of the road. The roads are not straight like in America, where you can just get on and put your cruise control on and zone out and go straight for 100 miles. It was lots of farm roads, so the tractors would get mud on the roads. There are lots of curves. Their trucks are called lorries over there, and they can hit a car head on and drive away, and you could look at the lorry and there would be no scratch on it. The paint wouldn't even be chipped, but the other car would be totaled. Like the engine compartment was in the back seat. That's how hard it would be. And it was that level of danger and anxiety that also just kept me up, kept me busy mentally, so I couldn't relax physically to get refreshed and get my sleep and be a proper husband, dad, and service or a service member and community member.
Okay, so I don't want to dig too deep into the details of what your therapy sessions were like, but what would you say during your therapy sessions were some of the major takeaways from your early therapy sessions?
So one thing that I like to point out to people is I'm not a private person. I'm an open book, is what I tell people. Just be careful what you ask me because I will tell you the answer. You may not want to hear it. But what I like to tell people is if you are asking for legitimate help and you want it and you go to a therapist, they're going to have you do a lot of the work on yourself. They're going to ask you questions about how do you feel about things, why do you react that way, and how do you feel about it. Like, what are your physical sensations, what are you thinking, what are you what's your initial reaction, and then followed by your initial is what's the secondary action that happens after that. Because your first one is what you're trained to be when you're growing up. That's how you're conditionally trained. But your second is who you are as a person. So they ask you these questions, and most of what they give you is you needing to work on yourself outside that session. So you sit for 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, and they talk to you, but they give you homework. And you have to, in my experience, through my many therapists around the service, I always had to go and work on myself outside of the therapy session. I had to do my homework and I had to reflect on myself to the point where now I can go into my therapy sessions and I can say, hey, I was feeling this. I thought about it and I think this is causing my trigger, but I'm not satisfied with that answer just yet because I've done A, B, and C as well, and I didn't have that reaction. And so if if we if we look inside ourselves and really analyze things, like I had this is going to tie back in, but I had anger management issues, and I went to anger management class, and they said you never just lose your temper just like that. There's always a buildup, and I was like, that's crazy. That doesn't happen. And they explained it over several weeks, and I had to look at myself, and I realized that my anger did escalate quickly, but it wasn't instantaneous. It was like 3 to 5 seconds from going calm to super angry. But there's things that your body does that if you listen to yourself and you look at yourself, you can feel, oh, my hands are starting to clench, my heart's starting to race, I'm starting to tense up my shoulders and my muscles. Those are physical reactions to your anger. And so as I turn my vision inward towards myself, I can feel these triggers starting to happen, and I could say, okay, I'm getting angry, I need to stop. I stop, I take a break, I say, I let my wife know. If I was at work, I let my coworkers know, hey, I'm trying to work on myself, I really need some assistance, it's going to make me better. And they were appreciative of that, and it allowed me to break into my anger. And I mean, I still get angry. It's a natural feeling, but it was not seeing red. I used to have my kids spill a cup of water, and to me, that was like the end of the world. Level 10 anger, just seeing red and just yelling, and the whole world was ending over just spilt water, right? That's not even anything that's going to leave a stain. It's not going to damage anything. But I was able to look into myself and stop those or notify or see those triggers first, and then start to cut them off as they would happen. And my anger length, from going from 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, it expanded greatly. And then I can even stop myself from getting certain levels of anger. Now, it's still healthy to feel anger because it's a natural feeling,
Right.
but you don't have to feel it at a 10.
So let me ask you this question, right? So you went and sought help yourself, right? Nobody told you to go, nobody directed you to go, or you just went on your own.
For mental health, I sought help. For
Oh,
anger, for that anger management, I had to go.
okay.
Or it was an incident.
All right. And trust, I think most a lot of guys have it, especially in the military, have had at some point to are forced to go to anger management because the military will piss you off just by itself alone. But so I want to ask you this question. Um, as someone who has dealt with mental health issues myself, and has sought therapy, and to this day, I still go see a therapist once a week. We sit down and we just talk about things, and not every session is oh, my world is coming to an end, or gloom and doom. The like my last session was just me sharing some of the good things that have happened, and trying to build upon that, right? But I want to back up some because this is the issue that I think that a lot of men have. Is it's twofold. A, they don't know that they have mental health issues, right? Um, because mental health oftentimes in society is looked at as as a negative thing. So men typically don't even think about it, right? They don't even half the time they don't even know they got problems, right? Um, all they know is they are reacting to what they think is, someone else causing them a problem, right? So, how were you able to identify that um that you had a mental health issue? Was that something that that once you were in therapy, it was brought about or talked about, or was that, were you sitting there one day and just like yo, like I feel off, like I need to go talk to somebody, like what was that like for you?
So a couple things is one, I just want to circle back on that anger issue. It was on a basketball court during physical training. We were playing basketball and it got too physical, so it was not anything related to domestic or anything super inappropriate. It was just two heated guys got into an argument about sportsmanship, and I lost my head. But
Did you
for
did you body slam somebody? Because you're pretty tall.
no, we got separated before we could make contact.
Okay.
But there was there's probably about 8 people involved, and 6 of them were keeping the 2 of us apart. But I actually grew up with my mother, who had she passed away in 2017.
Sorry to hear about that.
She had cancer, so if people like my mom refuse to get medical checks, this is my public statement. Get your health checks annual. They are for a reason. They will save your life. She didn't go for many years, and when she finally did go and get checked out, it was already stage 3 and way too past her time to get it caught. So, um, for your safe or for your sanity and health and the well-being of everyone around you and that you care about, just go get it done. It's once a year. It'll pay off in dividends that you can't even imagine.
That's
Um,
men and women, please.
Everybody, yes. And if you identify as anything other than a man or woman, this includes you too. But for me, she grew up adopted, and she had a lot of issues with her life, and she projected them on me as a child. So I had a lot of my anxiety, and I believe some of my depression is learned behavior from her. And I've had brain scans done, and they say, there's nothing abnormally wrong with my brain to show that, because there's, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe there's some physical relationships with mental health issues and your brain, with abnormalities and shapes and stuff like that. But they did some brain scans on me in my past, and they said, oh, you have a perfectly healthy brain. There's nothing wrong. Um, the different medications that I've tried have helped, show that it's kind of more of a learned behavior than a biological one. And so I've been trying to break myself of that, and I'm getting better and better. But it's a long road. But it kind of started with my childhood and realizing, I have a lot of negativity coming in from my house, with where I grew up, and how she would talk to me, and not like talk down to me or anything, but how she would listen, or how I would listen to her and talk about how she grew up, and how she would view things. It put these views and these perspectives and these reactions and these thought processes into my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe I was a teenager when we had the conversation of she had to, or she wanted to kill herself. And she was actually hospitalized when I was younger in life. I didn't realize what it was for, but she was hospitalized for a couple months for attempted suicide. So having that discussion as a teenager and be like, oh, I can see how this affects somebody, but it didn't plant the seed, but it helped me as a person, like, realize there's a lot of things going on inside of people that you don't notice from the outside. And through that self-reflection and looking inward from that, I learned from my therapy. I figured out I got a lot of things that I can work on. I have a lot of positive things about me too that I've figured out through this. So it's not all bad, and you're not looking for dirt. You're not trying to find all your problems. You can find some goodness inside yourself and find more motivation. You can find a new trait. You can find new fun. If you look in, you don't know what you're going to find.
So it's interesting that you say that a lot of things that you point towards your childhood as the beginning of this mental health journey, but it was kind of the seed that planted you on this road. And oftentimes there's a lot of people walking around that have had terrible childhoods, and to them they just kind of brush it off as, it's just one of those things that they went through. However, they are they're manifesting their issues from their childhood in their adulthood life. And I was one of those, right? So my story is I grew up, I was bullied, right? And I when I say bullied, I mean bullied. I was picked on by boys, I was picked on by girls, I was short, skinny, big old head, small feet, small hands. So I was just a walking target, right? And I dealt with that on a daily basis, and it beat me down and beat me down and beat me down and beat me down to the point to where as an adult, as a young adult, I had zero self-confidence. Like me, self-confidence in the same sentence, probably not. Um and then, you know, as a result of me not having any self-confidence, I had horrible relationships. And it was either I was what the new age calls simping, you know,
Mm.
trying so hard to get a girl that I was willing to do whatever it took to get that girl. Um I was, you know, doing things that were just, I was trying way harder than what I ever needed to. And so then, but the thing was is I wasn't dealing with my issues. Like I wasn't dealing with any of it. I was literally just pushing it off to the side and trying to get through the next day, right? But what ends up happening is you don't deal with those issues. And then at some point it becomes a compounding effect, and uh it it can overtake you. And that led me down a path of deep depression, which ultimately led to me being suicidal. And then obviously I didn't kill myself or anything like that, but as I came out of that, i was I became angry. I was like, Incredible Hulk angry without the muscles and the violence, right? But it was literally like if you looked at me wrong, I was ready to punch you in the face. And but that was complete opposite of how I was growing up. So if you knew me growing up, you would have had looked at me and be like, "Yo, who is this cat? Like he's completely different." But it was all a manifestation of just pure chaos that was going on inside of my mind. And like you, the first thing I had to go to was anger management. And anger management was my first opportunity at therapy, right?
Right.
Because if you've been in anger management, you have to talk about your issues, and when it's forced upon you, you absolutely have to talk about your issues, or else they're not gonna let you leave. Well, I mean, they'll let you leave to go back to work and all the other stuff, but you're not gonna be able to stop going to your
Yeah,
sessions.
you don't get credit.
Yeah. Um, but it wasn't even then. After I finished anger management, it wasn't until a couple of years down the road where just there was it didn't matter what I did. I just couldn't find myself to be content or happy with anything, right? And so um I started seeking seeking help. My first therapist was trash. Um, but then I found this sweet old lady who, like, she listened to me talk, and you know she connected a lot of dots for me that otherwise I would have never been able to connect. And so it started the process of healing, which this process of healing brought about balance. I was not so angry, but I also wasn't so gullible and you know naive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that.
And so that, just being able to just simply find balance can do wonders for you. But there's a lot of people who don't know that they have issues, right? And this is not just obviously this podcast is a discussion for men, but this also affects women as well. And um, so my question to you, right, is okay. So you started seeking help, and um, at a certain point, right, you had to feel like, okay, I feel like I'm getting some momentum here, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better about myself. Did you get to a point where you were like, all right, I'm kind of done with this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I started hearing the same story through different therapists because as you move around the world, you kind of have to change therapists. And I was like, I've heard this story. I've heard this story. So I go to 3 or 4 sessions. It's the same, rigmarole every time. For me, it felt like. And I was like, okay, I've heard this. I've known this. Okay, I've tried this. Okay, next. And then the next session. Okay, I've know this one. Next session. Okay, after 3 or 4 times, I'm like, okay, I'm missing work now. I'm not getting anything productive out of this. I've already hit all these dots. Is this everything you got to offer? And they challenged me to look inside myself, which I didn't start doing back then. I kind of gave it surface level looks. I wasn't really digging. And so after a few therapists and a couple of duty stations, I was like, okay, I'm done. I've checked all the boxes and everything that they've done. I've done it. So I've got this. I'm better. I'm healed. I can just, if I get depressed, I can just try magic trick number 7, or not magic trick. Sorry. I'll do this exercise they gave me and I'll work through it. And I thought I had all the answers. And so I stopped seeking help for a little while, and I had the belief that I had everything covered, and I didn't. And I got very frustrated, and I was like, I've done everything all these therapists have said and done, and I'm still coming up short. There's got to be something. And I want to point out too that therapists aren't every therapist isn't the same. There's everybody has different styles, different backgrounds, different trainings, different experiences, different patients. Um, they're they're like shoes. Everybody has a different running shoe. My feet roll in when I run, so I have to get shoes because I'm a supinator, is what it's called. So I can't use basic shoes. But I had to try. I had fractures in my feet from using poor running shoes. But every base I go to, I try on average 3 different therapists before I find one that fits me, because I need someone that works with me and that I work with them. And I would highly recommend not going to one therapist and getting stuck and be like, okay, this is it. Therapy's not for me. No, just maybe that therapist isn't for you. Maybe their style isn't for you. So I would caution that. But for me, I thought I had all those answers, and I went back to therapy again with a different therapist, and I was like, hey, I'm stuck. I've done A, B, and C. I did this, that, and the other. And like, oh, let's try some inpatient for you, or outpatient. Sorry. um,
What does that mean?
so the inpatient and outpatient. Outpatient is you go to a hospital for 8 hours a day, and you do therapy through them. And it's for me in the military, it was an alternate duty location. So I would just go to there, check in, do my 8 hours, and then I would just go home after lunch or after it was done. And that was my duty day for, I think it was 3 weeks or so. Um, and then inpatient is where you go to the hospital and you check in, and you sleep, eat, and you are there for until the doctors release you. So it's basically like going to eat at a restaurant versus getting fast food. You know, you're kind of there for the long run on inpatient,
Okay.
and you're there at the, you know, I did inpatient. It was 20 days, and it was no shoelaces, no belts. I lost my strings to my hoodie. There was no locks on doors. There was no shower curtains. Um, it was everything was controlled, cameras, and it was there for our safety because everybody and anybody that needed mental health went there. And then after they would evaluate you, and if you were a more serious case, they would move you to the higher wards for people that were mentally, like legitimately mentally unstable.
Mm-hmm.
But it was um, it was good for me, and that was a really good experience. And I wouldn't recommend it for everybody because when I was in there, a lot of people didn't want to be there and they didn't want the help. So the whole time they were in there, they were just fighting it. Let me out, let me out, let me out. And I went in there with an open mind, and I went in there. What can I get out of this? I'm here. What can I get out of it?
Well,
And
I mean, I can see how, there would be some people there that would not want to be there. It doesn't sound like the most inviting environment to be in. But at the same time, if you're truly seeking the help that you need, and that's an option for you, and it it's one of those avenues that can help you, then if you're really trying to get better, you'll suck it up and deal with it.
right, and it's not like an inpatient is not your very first step into mental health. If it is, you really do need the help, and it's usually because there's something like a police action that happened, or it's in the state of Florida. It's called Baker Act. I don't know if that's a national thing, but in the state of Florida, it's called the Baker Act, and they can put you in an institution for 72 hours.
Oh, the great state of Florida.
That's where I went to get my help, and it helped me. So don't knock it too hard. But it it is what you make of it. I started off with therapy. Then I went to outpatient, and then I went to inpatient over 12 years of therapy. And it was the thing that put me into the inpatient was my mother was uh, diagnosed with her cancer, and she at the time I didn't know that, but she had 4 months left before she passed. So that level of stress with seeing her health starting to decline and everything go down with that. There was stress at work. There was stress at home. My marriage was falling apart, which I'm still going through divorce now, still for 3 years. Um, and my wife at the time didn't have a job yet, so I had to sell my truck because we couldn't afford the gas, and there was a lot of external pressures. I could just list the thing, but we only have a couple hours, so I don't want to burden you down with that long list of stuff that I have going on. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. But there's a lot more to cover. But I had a lot going on, and I really did need that inpatient help because it helped take away all my extra stresses and help me focus on what I needed for me. I didn't have to worry about going to work. I didn't have to worry about driving. I didn't have to worry about what my next meal was. I didn't have to worry about my boss being down my neck. I didn't have to worry about deadlines. I didn't have to worry about my kids' soccer practice or um, anything that would bother me. And everything was taken care of, and I could focus solely on myself when I was an inpatient. And I that's the view I took on it, and I appreciated every minute of it. Um, there's some things that didn't work for me, but when I was there, I would see that it's actually helping people. There's lots of different techniques for helping people figure out what they need, what works best for them, and it was an eye-opening experience for me because it helped turn my what I considered wasted therapy sessions over my life. It helped me realize that those didn't work for me, but they help somebody. So they're trying them on them. They're trying it on everybody because they don't know exactly what works for you. And the brain is very complex. And so it takes a lot to figure out how to get down to the root of things. Because if you can't solve the root problem, it's always going to be there. It's always going to manifest, and it's always going to come back. If you cut the top of the tree off, it's the roots are still there and it's still going to keep growing type deal.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I try to discuss with my airmen that I supervise is you know yeah, we can go out back and cut the grass, but if we don't dig up the weeds and dig up the roots, those problems are just going to come back. And that is what I found is that this is like I had a conversation with my wife, and my wife was going through a depressive state, kind of similar to what you were going through when um with you going to England. She my wife is from Belize. I met her when I was stationed there, and she moved to the U.S. Had a son. COVID happened. You know, she she was actively pursuing her career as a nurse prior to having to come to the U.S. The plan was is once she had my son, you know she was gonna go right back into it, but then COVID happened, and then right when she had the chance to start to make her move on nursing, we get orders to Germany, and then we move here, and then the opportunities to work here are very limited, and so she just felt like she was in this and she's in a new country, not able to work, nothing has been going the way that she planned, and so she went through a depressive she was going through a depressive state. And the thing was is she wanted me to help fix the problem. And what I explained to her, and this is the point that I want anyone who's listening to this to understand, that the person next to you, or the person that is closest to you, a friend or a family member, I'm pretty sure they can listen to you, but oftentimes they won't be able to give you the advice you need that's gonna help dig up the root of those problems. They can help you cut the grass. They can help you, make you feel better. Give you some tidbits here, some tidbits there. That's gonna help help make you feel better. But I highly recommend seeking professional help from someone who's experienced and trained in digging up roots. And the reason why I say that is because you know 9 out of 10 times, right, I'm going to give you advice from my perspective, and my perspective may not be beneficial to you. It may give you a temporary feel good, but in the long run it's likely not going to be beneficial to you, because it's going to be based off of my perception and my personality and my preference.
Absolutely, and that makes sense. And I can relate to that because I have a group of two buddies of mine that I graduated high school with, and I still talk to, and they help call me on my stuff. And one of them a couple years ago challenged me to like, hey, stop being a teenager and grow up and be an adult. And I was like, oh wow, that really hurt. And I instead of being upset about it, I went and I reflected on it, and I was like, hey, you know what, you're right. I've outgrown, or this incident happened more than half my lifetime ago, and I'm still letting it affect me, and I'm still being a child about it. I need to grow up and mature. But if the people around you aren't thinking properly, or they're not functioning well on their own, they're going to give you damaged advice, right?
I mean, but even that advice itself, right? It's great advice, but that's cut your grass advice, right? Because yeah, he's telling you, you need to mature, you need to grow up. But my question to him would have been, and you need to move on from these things. Is my question to him would have been, okay, how do I move on from this? Because obviously, it's happened some time ago, and I'm still dealing with it. So it's not as easy as a flip of the switch, right? So, and that's where I say, excuse me, a professional is going to help you with that. And I, I would, I highly suggest and I advocate for, even if you don't think that you have issues, or maybe things are going well in your life, or you think that they're going well in your life, still seek therapy. Just because there would be times where I was smiling and having fun and enjoying life and all of these things, but I the problems were still there, right? I just wasn't adding to them, so I wasn't paying attention to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, they didn't go away.
They didn't go away. I just my they were over here and my attention was over here, so I'm enjoying what I got going on over here. But the problems are still behind me, stacking up.
Yeah, it's getting worse.
And so that's why I say, I recommend for any and everyone possible, that can possibly do it, to sit down and just talk to a therapist that about whatever it is that you have going on, because they are when you find the right one, they're gonna know how to dig and pull up things that you didn't even think about, right? Maybe some stuff from your childhood that has been that caused you to you know twitch a little bit when you hear a sound or something like that. Literally could be something as simple as that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, for me, and it's funny you mentioned that, is today actually I had a session and I was talking, and it was about I had a truck accident last year and I almost took myself and my kids out and due to hydroplaning. And I realized that I had a lot of issues driving since then. And when I was talking to my therapist about it this morning, I told her, and as I was talking, these words formed in my mouth, but they weren't in my brain. So as I talked it, I was like, this is new to me. Let me see what I say. And it turns out I said that I have a lot of driving anxiety because I was in, I think, 6 accidents as a passenger with my mom when she was driving as a kid. So I have a lot of stress on the road that I didn't realize I was carrying from my childhood, and I'm 38 years old and I just figured that out today. So it was incredible.
That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like, it's something that you've been carrying this entire time, not even knowing that it was a thing for you. But then you're in a session with somebody whose job is to literally dig up problems and dig up, issues from your past, and boom, out comes something that shocked you and
Very.
and surprised, probably surprised your therapist too.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was interesting because like my eyes lit up and I was like, oh, I can't believe I just said that. I didn't even know that I was feeling that. And another thing that therapists help you with is when you verbalize something, you process it in a different way than when you just think it. So if you're thinking things like I've done in the past, I've thought something for years and years and years, and I said it out loud to my therapist once, and as soon as I said it, I heard it in a different view, or I saw it from a different viewpoint, and I took apart my own argument without their help. I solved my own problem, even though I was stuck on it for more than a decade when I just said it out loud. I've never said it to anybody before because nobody gave me the time. It was one of those like things you just think about when that keeps you up at night, and nobody wants to listen when you're trying to just fall asleep. But it's interesting, and in order to help a therapist, you have to help look within yourself and you have to help guide them on that journey. Because if they're asking questions and you stonewall them, you're not going to get anything out of it anyways. So it's a two-way relationship with them, and you have to have that trust and that right therapist for you too.
Okay, so I've noticed that you said that you have to look within yourself. You probably said that probably about 4 or 5 times. So what exactly does that mean? Like if you had to break that down into simple terms, what exactly would that be?
So the way I imagine it is, if you've seen the Disney movie Inside Out, I view myself from a an internal view. I'm a visual person in my mind, and I think about from the inside of my brain. I see how my body is reacting, and I think, what am I feeling as it goes across my vision in my head, like the teleprompter or the telescreen in the movie, and I noticed that I'm starting to feel this, or I got my body started to tense up here, or I'm thinking this and it's driving my anxiety, or um, I,
So is it kind of like a self-reflection?
it is. There's different ways to look at it. One way is like, if in a computer program, when you hit a button, there's a bunch of code in the background that happens. When I say I look into myself, I try to look at that code for my body. What's my heart rate doing? What are my muscles doing? Where's my mind? Is my anger going off? Is my anxiety spiking? Am I afraid? I'm fear driven. I've found out. So is my fear driving something, and what is causing that fear? And I figured out, like for instance, the spilled water with my kids and my anger was a 10 back earlier in this conversation, and I figured out after years and years of looking at myself, that I still am afraid on some level that if something spills, my mom is going to come through the door and yell at me. Because when I grew up and something small happened, like you're spilling a glass of water, it was yelling and screaming. Things were getting thrown. I was probably getting beat, and it was like run for the hills. It's crazy talk. It was very stressful. So I had, and it took me many years of reflecting. I know they knocked over the water, and I got super mad. Well, why? I don't know. And that's what the session was. And I was like, okay, well, what do you feel? It's like, I just feel anger. Well, well, it took many years of, not actively, but every now and again, like, well, what was causing that? What could be beneath that anger? Well, I'm mad because they spilled the water. No, it's just water. It's not going to ruin anything. Okay, they didn't waste water. It's just water. You can get it out of the sink. Um, and it took digging down, down, and down to realize that I was afraid. Like, I had a fear reaction when I would break down those steps of how my anger built up. One of them was fear. I felt fear at one point, and I was like, why do I feel afraid? I'm the man of the house. My wife is just as important in the role of the household as I am. We're not going to yell at me if the water spilled. So what is that fear of? And after looking and searching some more, I figured out that I had the same fear reaction to when something would happen and my mom would get angry. Because when my mom got angry, my whole experience, or my whole focus on life, was survival and escape. Because I didn't know if I was going to lose a privilege. I didn't know if I was going to lose a toy. I didn't know if I was going to get spanked. I didn't know if I was going to go to bed without dinner. I didn't know what the punishment was going to be for any action that I did. Um, and so it's taken a lot of inner reflecting and figuring things out. And it is painstaking. It takes energy. It's not easy. You're not going to sit down at once and go, oh, I figured everything out and I'm done. You can sit over several sessions and not make any progress. Don't get frustrated with it. It's
It's a process.
it's a very long process, but only you can do it for yourself. A therapist won't be able to break that for you, because you have to reflect on those things, and you have to be honest and listen and be able to open up.
So are these so looking into yourself, right? Are these real time as it's happening mental mental self-reflections, or is this okay, I went through this particular situation or scenario, I reacted this way, and after the fact I am sitting down meditating or having quiet time or something like that, and I'm looking back at the situation and kind of working through all the different steps that I went through to get to wherever whatever level I was at. So for like for me, right, I do a lot of self-reflecting, but it's typically after the fact. And so, you know, the I have a place where I go and I'm able to clear my mind and to just let go of all that all the different stressors or things that I'm dealing with, cuz as you know, we in the military live a stressful life as it is, right? And then you add on school and retirement and kids and wife and s-
COVID.
COVID. Oh my god, dude. Hey, listen, all these gray hairs that I got in my beard, I got during 2020 to 2021. And I was teleworking from home, stressed out to the max. Um, I probably was. I wanted to quit. I really did. I really wanted to just say, "F this, I'm retiring." But every time I get to that point, the Air Force sneaks in this, "Hey, how about this assignment to Germany?" And I'm like, "Oh, you guys suck," because I really want to go to Germany. So that's kind of how I ended up here instead of retiring when I was in Texas. But back to I kind of went off on a tangent on that. But yeah, so I have a quiet place that I go that I can relax. And usually during that time period is when I'm able to do some self-reflecting and run through whatever the particular scenario is or scenarios that I've been dealing with, and how I could, if whether I was right or wrong, whether why did I react this way, or why didn't I react a certain way? You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
So is that kind of your process, or is yours a little bit different?
So I'll give you my favorite answer for any question that I love to say is it depends. If you're in a situation where it's life or death, you're not going to sit there and analyze it as you're doing it because there's too much to risk it while you're going through it. But if it's something that you really need a lot to think about and to analyze, I think about things both after the fact and during the fact. If I come across something that I've been dealing with for a while, but it doesn't happen very often. When the action is happening, I try to go through the whole process while it's happening, because I know that I'm going to survive it, but I need to figure out while I'm in it so I can say, is it fear or is it anger? Is it just anxiety? Is it a perceived threat, or is it an actual threat? Is my heart rate elevated? Are my hands clamped? Am I sweating? What's my heart rate doing? Are my shoulders tense? Is the car out of control, or is the phone really ringing off the hook? And I have to analyze these things at different points because I'm an analyst. I like to analyze things and I like to tear things apart. And so I like to get as much information as I can, because I feel like sort of like a scientist where you gather the data as it happens and then you can reflect on it later. And sometimes your memories aren't that great, so you can't remember everything after the fact. But for me, it depends on what the situation is, what the severity is, how important it is for me to actually get through that. And so that's my advice: is it depends, and everybody needs to try it, if it's not life or death, and try it both ways. And every situation can be different. Some things you want to do as it happens, others you like, I want to sit about and think about this tonight, and when the threat is not in my face.
Okay. So I have a question for you, and it's a bit of a personal question. So if you don't want to answer it, just let me know. So I know you said that you've been going through a divorce for roughly about 3 years now, right? 3 years is a long time. I don't know if you know, I went through a divorce. Mine was about 6 months. of dealing with from the time, I was notified or that, I was served with divorce papers to the day um it was all said and done. The judge signed off on it or whatever. What kind of pressure and anxiety and mental strain has it put on you over the last 3 years dealing with that and without any closure?
So for me, this has been the divorce is one of the worst experiences of my life. I hate to say it, but dealing with my mother passing from cancer was easier than going through this divorce with my wife. And I say that because when my mom got notified that she had cancer and it was terminal cancer, her whole life changed. Her attitude changed. She became a different person. Instead of um, always having negativity or trying to control things or get things to go exactly her way, she loosened up. She changed her personality, and she became someone that I wanted my kids to be around. And her experience, I wish I had that. I think it was a year and a half from the terminal diagnosis to when she passed. I wish I had that year and a half for my entire life, because I would be a different person. My kids would be different. Everybody in my entire everything would just be so much better if she was that person that whole time. But this divorce has been so strenuous because I have fear of the unknown. With this divorce, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. There's a wide range of, I'm going to have to mac and cheese it the rest of my life, or I can have, filet mignons the rest of my life. There's that much of a pendulum swing in what the judge can decide. And this also impacts, the divorce actually impacts my kids' standard of living. If I have to pay a certain amount to keep them in their current school zones and in their comfort level in their home, I have to pay more money for that. And the judge is taking that under consideration. So there's a lot to work with, and there's a lot riding on it, and it's such a wide range of things that can happen, that I'm personally scared to make some decisions. So I'm giving a lot more money than I need to, but if I that judgment falls, I'm already paying the maximum that I can to survive. So it can't get any worse than I'm living right now. So it's only going to either sustain or get better. And that's how I've made my decisions. But not having that closure has been extremely difficult because for me personally, I like to follow the rules. So legally, I'm still married. So I can't date because I'm legally married still. And
Right.
it bothers me because I've been separated physically from my wife for more than 3.5 years, and we've been going through the divorce process for almost 3 years. We have our own banking accounts. We still have a couple shared for bills and that stuff for the house, but we live separate lives. We have separate everything, except for legally on paper, we're still married, and it for me that's really bothersome because it I'm a
You're in a proverbial holding pattern. Your entire life is pretty much in a holding pattern. You can't just move on.
right. I am painfully honest, as I've been told, and so with if someone asks, "Are you married?" Yes, I'm married, but not really. I'm only married on paper. I got my VA loan wrapped up in the house, so I can't go buy a house when I move back to the states. Um, I have to file all my paperwork as married, even though I'm still paying for everything for them and myself. So I have a lot of things that I'm still stuck on mentally within myself, that because I'm still married, and it's gone on. COVID made it worse. Our judge canceled all of our court cases, and from March of 20 to December of 20. So when the new judge took over in January of 21, he was 10 months behind on cases, and it's still backed up into 2023.
Oh,
He has case. If I was to have another court date, it would be into 2023, at least July or August by now.
oh, wow. I mean, I kind of went through a court case with my ex. We were trying to readjust the finances because spousal support was coming to an end, and so that took that one little thing took a year and a half. So I can only imagine um, the scenario that you're in. But I did like the fact that you said that you kind of maxed out the amount that you would have to pay, and so you've kind of already adjusted to what life would be like.
Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
No.
And so I kind of got hit with the shock treatment, and it was definitely an adjustment for me. But I get it. I understand because I have too been there. Um, but so just to kind of wrap this up, and I kind of want to bring us full circle. Um, you're 16 now in the military. You're 15 of seeking therapy. Um, what are your sessions like now that you've kind of had 15 years of experience of of seeking therapy? What would you say a typical therapy session is like for you now? Because obviously you kind of know you've kind of gotten some of the tools on how to work through problems and look inside yourself, as you like to say, to hammer out these things. So, what are your sessions like now? If you had a session today, what would your expectations be like going into that session?
So now compared to when I very first started, I will say that I talk a lot more now. I'm more honest now, and I'm more receptive to what they say, my therapist, because I noticed if did not open up, or I didn't take their advice, or I didn't do anything between sessions, there was no change, and that was very frustrating. It's like I'm going to get help. Why am I not changing? Things aren't changing. Well, it takes work on my part, and I wasn't putting it in the beginning. So it's I wouldn't say night and day, because I did talk in the beginning, but it was more. I was looking just for them to say the magic word, and all of a sudden, oh, that makes total sense, and my life is happy now. And I was that's what I was honestly looking for. I didn't expect to be here 15 years plus later, still working on problems. Um, but it's because it took me years, um, to actually take an honest look and be like, okay, this is going to be real work, and I really need to go after this, and it's on my shoulders. They're here to help guide me through this process, but only I can get to the finish line.
Well, I mean, it took years to build up those problems, so it's easier to obtain problems than it is to unravel problems. And that's the thing that I've come to discover and to learn during my therapy sessions is that it takes the drop of a dime, the snap of a finger to get a problem and for it to make its way into your mind and to settle there. And then it takes time and patience and surgical precision to get rid of that problem. And so, you know, I understand what you're saying. It's 15 years later, and it's still a process.
But if I can, I would challenge you and say, if you see a problem coming in, you can minimize the effect of it with looking into yourself and using the tools as you see a problem coming. For instance, I had something come up at work, and I knew it was going to stress me out, but I realized it was going to stress me out. And so I helped talk myself through a therapy session before the problem came to settle within me, if you will. Like, I heard it and I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. But before I would like let it hit and fester, I attacked it as it was coming in. So by the time it hit the ground in my mind, it didn't have a chance to be as devastating as it was.
Oh yeah, no, I completely understand that because for me, it's kind of similar. So like for me, when I am faced with an issue, I have to talk it out. I refuse to let it sit and fester, and then me not deal with it. No, we're gonna talk about this right off rip. I'm gonna talk about it right now. I don't really care if you are, you know, if you're upset or you don't like what I have to say. I have to say it because I don't want to to deal with it later on. Like we going to because I what I found is that I can live a much freer life that way. And it doesn't lead to me um being as upset quicker, or it doesn't lead to depressive states as often. Do we have depressive moments? Yeah, they come about. There are times where you're just like, I'm just not feeling it today. But those times are so fair and few that it's almost like at times they can go unnoticed because it just doesn't happen as often.
Absolutely. And sadness, like anger, is a feeling. You have to feel it. And when you push the sadness away, it's only going to get worse and it can lead into a depressive episode. And so everybody's different and we all take on these challenges differently. So it's a process that you have to learn for yourself. We're two examples of how we took our therapy and we're using it for us. We are both not at our finish lines, but our processes, they are different from each other, but they both work. Mine work better for me, his work better for him. But we're products of people seeking help, honest help, and listening and working on ourselves. And so I would love to meet someone at the beginning of their journey and help them and watch them grow through their journey through the process as well, because I know people change, and I've helped people start their journeys, and I've seen people at the end or in the middle of them, but I never am able to see anybody from start to finish.
And my one advice to anybody would be, if you ever find yourself in the darkest hole, just remember that it's only for a short period of time. It you're not gonna stay there. It's not gonna last forever, and that there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll share a quick story on why I say that. Right. We were talking about divorce, right? When I got divorced, and a lot of people don't know this, is that you know for a short period of time, I was homeless, like 15 years in the military, and
That's incredible.
I was living in my car. Well, let me rephrase that. I was dating a girl. I was living with her, and then me and her broke up, and then I had no place to go because I had no money, because I was still paying all of the bills, living in a different state, and um, I was living in California, and 2/3 of my money was going to paying rent for somebody else's house, paying all their bills. They're the car that's the paying rent in the house that's in my name, paying car that with the loan that's in my name, and all of the bills, while she didn't have to pay anything.
Yeah, I understand that
And
100%.
and and so living in California, I couldn't afford to go out and get me an apartment.
Not in California.
And I had a top secret clearance, and I was terrified that I was going to lose my clearance. And so when it came down to the judge, and the judge hit me with the numbers, the amount of money that I was already paying got like an additional $400 stacked onto that. It was brutal. I was paying like $2,600 a month, and I was only bringing in like 48, something like that. Yeah, so it was like 48% of my paycheck was gone living in California, and I I I was in a dark place.
Yeah,
I
I
was
could.
in I couldn't see a way out, and then you know I went. I was forced to. Well, I wasn't forced, but my supervisor advised me to go seek a financial counselor because he got wind that I was living in my car. They moved me into the dorms, which was embarrassing because I'm a NCO living in the dorms with a bunch of brand new people fresh out of basic training, because I couldn't afford a place to live, and they end up advising me. They did all the math, right? Like the financial counselor did all the math, and he was like, if you go home and you only eat ramen noodles and you just go straight to work and back and you don't do nothing else, you're still negative $800.
I
You're
don't mean to laugh. I'm
yeah, no,
sorry.
no, it's all right. It's all right, right? You're still negative $800. And I'm like, bruh, like you know how people say you tread in water?
Yeah.
No, I was literally sinking to the bottom with lead shoes on, right? And so he was like, and so you can just imagine, right? It was like that was the state that I was in. So, I'm looking around and it's pure darkness because I know that I'm in trouble and I know I can't see a way out because guess what? I'm not smart enough at that point in time. I don't have all the intricacies and all of the information that I need, right? So the financial counselor was like, I'm gonna set you up with a bankruptcy lawyer, right? And I immediately freaking out because I'm like, yo, I don't want to lose my clearance. And he's like, you have to understand, right? You're not gonna lose your clearance because this isn't you being negligent, right? This is a circumstance of divorce, right? This is the unfortunate situation that you found yourself in. So fast forward, went saw the bankruptcy lawyer, um, and he hit me with the most awesomest news I had, and I know that's not a word, but the most awesomest news. He was like, "Stop paying all your bills. Don't pay a single bill." And I'm like, mm, "Okay." He's like, "Cause it's gonna be charged off during the bankruptcy, and so it's not gonna matter. It's gonna be all put into the bankruptcy." And so I went from being negative $800 and feeling like my life was over and that, you know, I was never going to be able to climb out of this hole to, being able to get a place to stay. Um, I didn't have much in there. I had literally had a bed, a TV, PlayStation, and some pots and pans, right? Um, but I had a roof over my head, and then I was fortunate enough to deploy right after that for 7 months.
All right on.
I got a bonus there that was tax free,
That helps.
and so when I came back from there, I had about 45,000, and I was able to essentially start my life all over again. And so I tell this story because in that moment where I was homeless and I felt like I there was no way out, I couldn't see what was going to happen 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months later. And, you know, long story short, I went from being homeless to deploying or to filing for bankruptcy to getting some money back in my pocket, getting a place to stay, deploying um, overseas for 7 months, coming back with a large chunk of money. I was able to buy a new car. pay cash for it. So I didn't have any bills. I was able to buy all new furniture and fly my kids out to spend Christmas with me.
That's awesome.
And so I I I need people to understand that the darkness does not last. And guys out there who find themselves in dark situations, because let's keep it 100. For every 100,000 people in this world, or for every 100,000 men in this world, 38 of them take their lives on a yearly basis. And so that's 38 out of 100,000.
That's too many.
And it's the 12th largest killer of males in the United States. And a lot of that has to do with the burden that men have to carry. But we carry that burden willingly, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but it can be a lot at times. And so it's important for men to understand that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that go out, seek help, talk to somebody who can really help with those problems that you're dealing with, or that you're not dealing with. Um, because it can literally save your life.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Nick, last thoughts.
Be honest with yourself and help yourself. You're going to do the best you can, and you're going to need help, but it's all going to be up to you to whether you're going to make a little bit of progress or all the progress. So look deep and find it, because your life depends on it.
All right. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, Nick, how would they do that?
So I play PlayStation and Steam, and I have a YouTube channel, and I think I have a Twitch channel too. But they're all under Leatherface 3825. You can find me on all those platforms at various times. I'm trying to put videos and stuff on Twitch and YouTube, but with everything going on and the divorce and COVID and everything, it's not as easy as I wanted it to be. But that you can reach me out there.
All right. What was that one more time for him?
Leatherface 3825.
All right. And you guys know where to find me. It's Mentality Podcast 22 on all platforms. It's Mentality Podcast 22 at gmail.com. And we love you guys. And we're signing off. Take care.
Take care out there.